All right, let's look at the last one real quick. So we're looking at, again, I think I want to simplify the left side of this first. There's not a lot of identities that I can think of that have to do with sine cubed of x. I mean, there's probably some ways that you could start out with the right side here, but I'm gonna look at the left side. And so what I want to do first is I noticed that both of these terms have a sine x in them. They have that in common. We could call that a greatest, or a common factor, rather. And so what I want to do is factor out a sine x from both of these. So I know that may also not be immediately obvious. A lot of this stuff is new to y'all still. Treating all of these trig functions sort of like variables when we were factoring. So if we rewrote this, if we said that, I don't know, sine x was a minus a times, and then if cosine x was b, then that would be b squared. And we wanted to factor this. Essentially what we would do is we'd take out an a, so we could rewrite it as a times 1 minus b squared. Hopefully that makes sense. So basically, I factored out an a from both terms, so I took it out and multiplied it out in front. So now if I were to FOIL this back out, or I guess it wouldn't be FOIL, but if I were to distribute this a back into this expression here, I would get what I started with, a minus a times b squared. So that's the same thing we're doing here. We're going to factor out a sine x from this whole expression. So we're left with 1 minus cosine squared of x inside. All right, and now let's look at what 1 minus cosine squared of x is. So this one's actually pretty simple once you get to this step. So remember, we derived this in the last two videos. 1 minus cosine squared of x is equal to sine squared of x. So that's the same thing as if I subtracted cosine squared of x from both sides on this. So I can basically substitute this sine squared into this expression right here, because this is 1 minus cosine squared. So if I were to rewrite that now, I would have sine x times, let me erase this, times sine squared of x, and I want that to be equal to sine cubed of x. Well, we're pretty much there now. Sine times sine squared, if I'm multiplying two things with like bases, I just add the exponents. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So that's going to give me sine cubed of x is equal to sine cubed of x. That's what was on the right side. So that's it. We're done with that one. Check, check. So this one wasn't too difficult. It wasn't that complicated. But remember, just work on these strategies. Remember to simplify anything that you can that has a reciprocal. Combine fractions. Sometimes you might need to separate fractions if you're trying to, say you were working with this side. Well, these aren't really fractions, but you might need to separate terms. If you were trying to make this side look more like this side, then you would eventually need something to have a minus sign, because you're going to need a minus sign over here when you finish. So things like that. A lot of this is creative, and it is really frustrating at first because sometimes it's not really easy to see exactly what the next step is supposed to be. But the thing I normally tell people, and this is what I tell people in physics classes too when I taught physics, is just start trying stuff. And the worst thing that can happen is you end up at a dead end, but at least you're making progress towards something rather than just sitting there and staring at it and saying, I don't see the next step. I don't see what I'm supposed to do here. Just try something. You can always find something you can simplify, something you can rearrange. And the other thing is to remember that all these problems are designed to be solved, and the ones at least that I'm going to be giving you shouldn't require 35 steps in order for you to solve them. So there should be a way. And again, it may not be immediately obvious to you, but there should be a way for you to get from point A to point B. It's usually designed for that purpose. So these aren't just random things that we put in, hoping that you can solve it. There's always going to be an answer, and the challenge is just figuring out how to get there. Last thing from this video. So if you made it this far, I'm going to give you a couple extra credit points on the video assignment. So the extra credit phrase is go heels. So if you type go heels in when it asks for the extra credit phrase on the Ed Puzzle video, that'll give you a couple points of extra credit. So thanks for your hard work, everybody, and let me know if you have questions.